Twitter X or Instagram or TikTok, whatever they are, if they don't moderate and monitor the content, we lose total
normalcy to it. What he says he intends to do, and when he turns around and says, Jen, to like the head of this network or other people who are critics, that he intends to
dislike of and anguish over social media is just growing and growing and growing, and it's part of our problem, particularly in democracies, in terms of building consensus around any issue.
Okay, look, I'm just going to go ahead and come on out and say it. Hillary Clinton is the woman, the turd, that quite frankly just won't flush. And Michael Cohen is also another turd that just won't flush. It makes me wonder what's going to happen to these people when they are officially off the world stage. You guys obviously got a small taste in the very beginning of I don't know, you got two people calling for some form of censorship. Of course, Hillary Clinton, which we'll play the full bit here in a second, actually outlines the real reason why they want the censorship, which of course is because the establishment is actually losing its power. But of course, I would contend that even if the current Democratic Party or Democratic Party nominee was to win, she would more than likely not get the Senate, not have the Senate, and therefore they would obviously have control of who the hell she can name to her cabinet. They're about as useless as tits on the board. But still, at the same time, though, to go on top of that, though, you got to ask yourself a question. Do these people really and truly have an actual grasp of the country? Do these people really and truly, how do I say, do they have the ear of the people? Do the people really and truly care about them? Well, we're going to be speaking about that, and obviously we're speaking about this thing called Section 230 and why it is that Hillary Clinton wants it banned. And also, to go on top of that, we're going to be talking about Michael Cohen more than once because he kind of coincides with the Joe Scarborough meltdown that I'll be posting about here shortly. The fact of the matter is this right here. These people are completely unhinged, and they're all saying the exact same thing. Donald Trump is going to lock us up when he's president, which is also kind of a contradiction given some other stuff they've said. But still, at the same time, though, when these people are going absolutely crazy and triggered the way they know they are, in fact, losing. Let's start with turd number one, Hillary Clinton.
There should be a lot of things done. We should be, in my view, repealing something called Section 230, which gave platforms on the internet immunity because they were thought to be just pass-throughs, that they shouldn't be judged for the content that is posted. But we now know that that was an overly simple view, that if the platforms, whether it's Facebook or Twitter X or Instagram or TikTok, whatever they are, if they don't moderate and monitor the content, we lose total control.
Okay. This same woman right now is jockeying for a position in Kamala Harris's cabinet. By the way, she's also advising Kamala Harris's presidential campaign, which is kind of funny too, because she's probably going to lose worse than what Hillary Clinton did. And given what's going on right now, the trends, the voter trends, also to go on top of this, the registration numbers, the early vote numbers that have come out of states like, say, Virginia, Pennsylvania, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it's not looking too good for her. The fact of the matter is that Hillary Clinton is an extremely unpopular person. She always has been an unpopular person. But at the end of the day, you guys can obviously see what the hell she's about. Thank God Donald Trump came around and kept this woman from becoming president. That is all I'm going to say. But then we get to someone like, say, Michael Cohen, who has actually benefited from all the press and, of course, him being locked up and, of course, all the negativity. And, of course, you get somebody who's going out of their way to basically just scream the whole thing. Donald Trump's going to lock me up. Let's go ahead and watch this bit.
Or the military within which to round up his critics or his opponents. He intends to do it. And I say that with firsthand experience. What Donald Trump, Bill Barr, the Department of Justice, the Bureau of Prisons did to me, the unconstitutional remand of a United States citizen, making me the first political prisoner in this country to be held by my own country because I wouldn't waive my First Amendment constitutional right. What that was for Trump.
It's always the worst kind of turds that abuse constitutional rights, like Michael Cohen tried to abuse this Fifth Amendment right. It's always people like that. They always find the Constitution, how do I say, only viable when something affects them personally. Just saying. I'm going to go ahead and say this about Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen was known to be the guy. He claims that he was Donald Trump's fix-it guy. He was his fixer, but we found out later on that that was actually not the case. We found out that Michael Cohen, in reality, was just a guy that let's just say that him and the Democratic Party have a lot of things in common. They love to break stuff, screw things up, and then turn right back around, put a Band-Aid on it, and then say that they obviously fixed it. Michael Cohen is somebody who's obviously biased against anybody that, let's just say he's biased against anybody who would actually vote for Trump. And by the way, when you listen to this guy's voice, you are automatically reminded of why it is that the state of New York, the city of New York, the New York accent was voted the least sexiest of all the accents out there in the world. I'm not saying that to make fun of New Yorkers. I love you guys. I know that some of you guys watch this content, but I'm just telling you right now that People Magazine and several other studies have been conducted on that actual accent. It's not you guys. It's someone like Michael Cohen, I think, that makes that accent look a lot worse or sound a lot worse than what many people perceive it to be. Just saying. But at the end of the day, it's just two turds that, quite frankly, won't flush. It's like one turd is flushed and then another one pops back up. I'm pretty sure you guys can kind of pick up on where I'm going with this. Is turds. That's what the hell these people are, and they're obviously showing you who the hell they really and truly are and how they really and truly feel about you. The fact of the matter is, oh wait, that's right. Turd number 3, John Kerry.
The referees we used to have to determine what's a fact and what isn't a fact have kind of, been eviscerated to a certain degree. And people go and people self-select where they go for their news or for their information. And then you just get into a vicious cycle. So it's really, really hard, much harder to build consensus today than at any time in the 45, 50 years.
Didn't this guy, ride a bicycle into a car or something like that? Like, crash his vehicle, like crash his bike into a car or something like that? I mean, do you really and truly think that somebody like this person needs to be anywhere near levels of power?
Secretary of State John Kerry.
Police!
The State Department says he apparently hit a curb while cycling in Switzerland and broke his right leg.
Is headed back to the U.S. after breaking his leg while biking. Kerry had a cycling accident this morning in France. He hit a curb and he fell. He was just across the border in Geneva, Switzerland for negotiations on Iran's nuclear program. Kerry did not lose consciousness.
What John Kerry said right there is the overall end-game goal. The overall end-game goal is to, in fact, censor you guys. Now, if you have a free-flowing republic, great exchange of ideas, you obviously need to have the... let's just say you obviously need to have freedom of speech. You obviously need to have the First Amendment, which also includes freedom of religion and freedom of the press. Now, I do want to say this because I don't really give out that many ideas, but I do, in fact, have an idea. I am somebody who, as you guys know, does, in fact, believe very, very much in the First Amendment. However, I do believe that there are certain things that, quite frankly, should not be, let's say, allowed anywhere near children, which is where 230 comes into effect. But we'll talk about that in a second, or it comes to affect this conversation. The thing about censorship is this right here. When they say stuff like you're not pro-First Amendment, you're not pro-free speech, a lot of times they're doing that because you're calling out a certain little activity or a certain little thing or a certain little agenda that's being pushed on kids or being pushed on the world. Like, for example, I don't think that school-age children should be exposed to books like This Boy is Blue and, of course, the books that they accuse conservatives of burning, which are actually books that are, in fact, sexually explicit, and they have a lot of other bad crap, and, of course, they're being shown to kids. I don't think that small children should be watching gory horror movies until they at least get a certain age. Obviously, we all have our own personal limitations. I also don't believe that pornography should be spread across the entire globe, all over the internet. Where it is, I think that there's restrictions that need to be put in place. I'm not saying ban it. I'm saying certain restrictions, certain little barriers should be put in place. The internet, of course, obviously makes the problem. However, when it comes to the topic of information, free-flowing information, whether it is, in fact, how do I say, faulty information, bad information, slightly inaccurate, or fully accurate, I'd say that we need to allow that information to flow. Why? Because we need to obviously archive it so that way we can have an idea of who to trust and who not to trust. Fact of the matter is this right here. Freedom of speech, the freedom of information, that type of stuff is extremely important, and it's very important to a very, very well-meaning, productive democratic republic like we have here. John Kerry, working at the World Economic Forum, Hillary Clinton, a multiple-time loser and turd that, quite frankly, won't flush, she wants the entire net censored, but yet idiots like Michael Cohen will still be allowed to talk. Michael Cohen actually benefited from this entire situation. Goes to prison, takes a plea, lies about the situation involving Trump, and then turns right back around and gets a deal to have a show on Netflix. It's amazing the turds that we have out there that suddenly get polished and get put out there. Like I've always said, okay, regardless how much you may polish a turd, at the end of the day, it's still a piece of shit.
Jeff Munson here. You like watching people get fucked for free? Watch me fuck Mark Kerr for free. I'm gonna fuck him. I'm gonna put these hands right around his ass and fuck his ass.
I had to edit that out because of YouTube. Look, I got a community guideline strike like 7 days ago. Obviously, I'm trying everything I can to keep it as clean as possible, but still at the same time, you guys can kind of see where I'm going with this. They want to ban you. They want to keep you from being able to speak freely. They want to keep certain information from you that you may need because they can see that they obviously will, in fact, lose power if you, the person, actually knows. It's more and more and more an indication, strong indication of a dying establishment, which is, in fact, the neoliberal, neoconservative establishment. Trust me, at some point in time, neocons like Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell and them, they will come out here and they'll start screaming and hollering for censorship too, especially if information is in fact released on them. But then we get the topic of Section 230, which is something that Hillary Clinton wanted to talk about. Now, let's go ahead and get to that.
Sounds right.
Hillary Clinton. This is moving weird today.
It is.
Hillary Clinton, let's just watch what she said this weekend. I don't know if you know this, free speech. The Clintons, not good bedfellows.
We should be, in my view, repealing something called Section 230, which gave, platforms on the internet immunity because they were thought to be just pass-throughs, that they shouldn't be judged for the content that is posted. But we now know that that was an overly simple view, that if the platforms, whether it's Facebook or Twitter X or Instagram or TikTok, whatever they are, if they don't moderate and monitor the content, we lose total control.
That part about Hillary Clinton synonymous with censorship, I don't think I need to go too much into that, but obviously we've got a lot more to talk about, so let's get back to it. I'll talk briefly about Section 230 here in a second, but I want to go ahead and get through my little spiel first and go ahead and explain to you why it is that these people are, in fact, literal turds, but let me go ahead and get to that before we get to Section 230.
So Hillary Clinton, it's not unique to her. I want to be very clear. They try and say that conservatives, that Republicans are banning books. No, they're banning pornography in schools with children. The left wants to ban speech consistently, and it's the only platform. You can disagree with me. Comment below. I will make this statement in the affirmative. The left is the only political wing in the United States that is systematically pushing for the elimination of viewpoints they don't like online.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
Yes, there is.
If people go to only one source, and the source they go to is sick and, has an agenda, and they're putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence.
We're going to have to figure out how we rein in our media environment so that you can't just spew disinformation and misinformation. It's one thing to have differing opinions, but it's another thing entirely to just say things that are false.
Basically, what Section 230 is, essentially, and of course I'm going to get the textbook definition wrong, but don't worry, I'll link everything in the description box before we get to this next bit, of course, because I did put Crowder in the thumbnail for a reason, because obviously there's some clips from Crowder having a conversation about this, and of course he eloquently explains it, and I'm going to add on to it like always. Section 230 is basically for the online world. Platforms like, say, X, Facebook, I still call from Twitter from time to time, all the online news outlets. And of course, as you guys know, there are certain people out there who get banned online for having certain opinions. I mean, I don't know how many times Alex Jones got banned over an incident involving Oliver Darcy at CNN. It wasn't even something that he said online. He got yoked for that. All right, just to kind of give you an idea what it is. But basically, certain sides of the aisle can say certain things, and that same side of the aisle cannot say that because of the BS hypocrisy, the double standard that we have in the world of speech, the world that we have. Of course, we're talking about the world of information and, of course, our mainstream media. As a matter of fact, you're going to hear me talk about this in the video I have on Joe Scarborough that's scheduled for tomorrow. I really and truly believe that it's incitement, really not for the right, but I'm starting to believe that it's really incitement for the left that I think is what the hell is really and truly going on, because they typically tend to be the ones to be the most violent side. But let's go ahead and get to this explanation of Section 230 and add on to why it is they want you to not be able to have access to the information out there or the ability to speak freely in an online world or a world period. The online world has surpassed these people. The online world has surpassed the actual establishment itself. That right there is the real reason why it is these people actually want it banned. But then again, at the same time, though, it's always been the end game goal. Anytime somebody brings up the leftist establishment and they bring up communism, I always look at them and say, yeah, they do in reality want Marxism. However, it's a certain flavor of Marxism that these people want, and that flavor of Marxism that they want is really fascism, because the Democratic Party has always been fascist, whereas the radical left has always been much, much more communistic in nature. But let us continue.
Exists in practice. So they're allowed to moderate based on only, obscene, lewd, lascivious, filthy, excessively violent, harassing, or the problem here is, or otherwise objectionable content.
That's it. That's the one.
And that's the problem. The left uses that as a very, very broad definition to mean anything anti-trans, anti-L. So let me just walk you along the path. Section 230, they're supposed to be politically neutral, right? They're supposed to allow content, no matter how offensive, of all viewpoints, as long as it is not effectively criminal. Just like Verizon, just like AT&T, Vonage, if you're still using them.
Okay, what AOC was saying there at the end about disinformation, and don't worry, we'll get back to Crowder here in a second. I just want to go ahead and throw this out here, okay? In 2008, the Republican nominee, John McCain, got right around 58 million votes. We can talk about the reasons why his vote total was low, but of course, he did not try to run a campaign that should have focused a lot on some of what Obama had done in his past, his connections with Bill Ayers. It probably wouldn't have gave him any additional more votes, but it would have obviously told people in 2012 that, you got what it is that you voted for, and you now expect, which could have lowered the vote total for Obama in 2008. He still would have won the election, but still. So come 2012, Republicans now get 61 million votes, and then eventually it becomes 63, and then eventually it becomes 74. That is the real reason why it is that this particular group of politicians, mostly on the left, and don't worry, you'll see it too, because there'll be some rhinos out here in the near future that'll come out and favor this type of crap here soon too. Or they will come in, they'll be in favor of it soon, trust me, or openly in favor of it, trust me. You can see that obviously one side of the aisle is picking up steam. Now, why in the world would they be picking up steam and adding more and more members? It's because they're better overall informed. The current Democratic Party relies on non-player characters. Don't worry, we'll probably have a video on that study coming out soon where people claiming or people finding out they don't have an internal monologue. That right there will come out soon. But basically, they don't want a populace that can actually think. But let us continue.
If you say, well, I don't believe two men should get married, that's hate speech. Or if you say, actually, we're at the point, I believe that biological sex is an actual thing, and they frame that as anti-LGBTQ, that is otherwise objectionable, and it is disallowed political speech online because the left wants to broaden those terms where everything is hate speech. If you say the pay gap is a myth, they've qualified that as hate speech. So Section 230 does need to be framed in. They want it to be framed out. Effectively that.
Yeah.
That's the description. We want them to be beholden to the same rules they signed on to. Pick a lane. Are you a publisher or are you a platform? The left says, no. We are going to give them the benefits of being a platform while allowing them to be a publisher. Do you understand the difference?
Exactly. It's supposed to allow the content to be free-flowing as long as it meets a certain criteria. Let me go ahead and say this really quick. I'm pretty sure the vast majority of people who are watching this particular channel are grown. I can tell by the actual analytics. Chances are you probably watched at some point in time South Park or Beavis and Butthead or one of the many lewd television shows out there. That type of stuff right there is put on TV, typically at a certain time, and you're allowed to get away with certain things, and quite frankly, we can watch it for a reason. However, why do you think back in the old days they used to have a certain section of the video store that was reserved for porn, and in some cases gay porn? Why do you think that was the case? They didn't want certain people going back there, and normally there was an employee to kind of put a stop to that. Fact of the matter is there are certain barriers that do in fact need to be put in place, and of course they come out and they say that you're anti-free speech because you don't want your child to be exposed to a book like, say, This Boy is Blue or Gender Queer or anything like that. They'll come out and they'll use it as a tool to attack you, and yet they never actually use any actual detail, when in reality people do in fact want details. Look, I told you guys before, I'm very, very much in favor of free speech. I'm also very, very much in favor of freedom of religion, even though obviously as a Christian, obviously I prefer my own over the other. But it's when you start doing stuff like live sacrifices, or when you start screaming jihad out in public with, can't really go too far in detail about that one because of course I really will piss off the censors and probably get another community guideline strike, which will be 90 days off. I'm pretty sure you guys can see that there are obviously limitations that in fact need to be put on. But if you see what the hell is going on online, where a certain side of the aisle is allowed to basically say and do pretty much whatever and do whatever degenerate crap they can do online out there for the world to see, whereas another side of the aisle just simply says something, you can obviously see the double standard. The right typically tends to get censored a lot more. And of course, if you bring this up into a debate with any one of these radical leftists, they'll use, well, basically what I just said. Well, you obviously violated the terms of service because you said this right, yet at the same time never give any details or allow you to give any actual details because they normally interrupt you. That's kind of sort of how the game's played. Another reason why it is that they want platforms like X to be controlled, platforms like Facebook to be controlled, is because they've been losing the war for ideas. That way, there's another reason why it is that they do not want you to be able to be informed. It's another reason why it is that the Google algorithm, when you type in a certain item, takes you to a list of favorable or unfavorable opinions or unfavorable articles or favorable articles on said individual, because obviously they're trying to push an agenda. They're trying to make the actual real truth much, much harder to find. It reminds me of that clip that got posted a long time ago about this is a threat to our democracy. I don't think I need to play it or anything, but chances are you probably remember what I'm talking about. It came out shortly after the 2016 election. They also do this same exact thing when it comes to the topic of identity politics, which is going to be a pretty nice little segue for me to kind of end this video. Let me give you an example of what I mean. In the world of identity politics, which of course I'll be doing another video on in the near future, especially when it comes to projects, the Democratic Party, of course, runs this bit all the time. As a matter of fact, it's costing them the center of the aisle outside of white liberals. The fact of the matter is that this is evil in every way, shape, or form, and it's all a part of their one world agenda. Basically, Section 230 is a lot like what they're doing with identity politics. That right there is pretty much what I'm trying to say. But the fact of the matter is this right here. It's very evil in practice. Now, me personally, I think what needs to happen with Section 230 is that it needs to be reformed, not repealed. I think that if you had a proper allocation of both sides of the aisle, and by the way, the left, they have hated it ever since Elon Musk bought X because they no longer have the advantages that they had before. We're fighting one another on an even playing field. It's probably going to be that way, assuming that more and more people who believe in free speech buy more platforms. Elon needed to buy YouTube. The point is this right here. The playing field is evened out, and obviously these people are pissed off. So they want to use whatever little bit of power that these people do in fact have, that they have to actually govern the populace and take over and censor the speech. That's what these people want to do. But it also leads me to one more thing, and it goes right back to why in the world you would want to do this. Now, there was a question that was asked a long time ago right after the 2020 election by Tucker Carlson. He asked the question, how do you govern a country that you hate? It's an interesting question. But what the question really and truly should be is, will the people end up following or believing a federal government that's illegitimate? Will they believe leadership that's illegitimate because we would see the leadership that's trying to censor us as illegitimate? Basically, these people don't have the country, which makes me wonder what happens after this election, even if the Democratic Party does, in fact, get their way and they do get Kamala Harris as president. But you guys tell me what you think in the comment section. Make sure you guys hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sign off in the comments, and I'll see you guys later.